Hey there, viewers. Before we jump into tonight's unsettling tales, let me ask, what's the weather like where you are and what time is it on your end? Drop it in the comments. Today, we're delving into some truly horrifying Diddy stories that might leave you more than a little rattled. Let's get started. Story number 1. The room no one talks about. I never thought working in a mansion would feel so suffocating. At first, I figured cleaning a celebrity's house was just like any other job. Wipe the counters, scrub the floors, don't touch anything that looks expensive. But Diddy's mansion wasn't normal. It was too big, too quiet in certain areas, and too loud in others. The parties, the visitors, the late-night arrivals of people dressed in suits with sunglasses on, even when it was dark outside, none of it ever sat right with me. Most of us on the cleaning staff stuck to the same routine every day. The lower floors, the hallways, the guest rooms, the main lounge. Those were fair game, but certain areas, you didn't go in unless you were told. And even then, you had to be quick about it. There were parts of that house that gave me chills just passing by. The third-floor hallway, for example. It had a study, a private office, and a couple of locked rooms that I never saw anyone come in or out of. They always had this feeling to them, like they were heavier than the rest of the house, like something was inside, waiting. Nobody ever told us why. Nobody needed to. If you worked there long enough, you just knew to keep your head down. One night, after one of his usual parties, I got a different order. "Go upstairs, clean the study," the head housekeeper told me. I hesitated. The study? I thought we weren't supposed to go in there. She gave me this look, one I'd seen too many times before, a look that told me not to ask questions. Diddy's out for the night, just get it done quick. I swallowed my nerves and nodded. I climbed the stairs, gripping the railing a little too tight. The house was unusually quiet, like it was holding its breath. No music, no murmurs from the after-party stragglers, no distant sounds of people laughing, just silence. When I reached the study, I hesitated before pushing the door open. The room smelled stale, like nobody had stepped inside for days, even though I knew that wasn't true. A big wooden desk sat in the center, stacks of papers scattered across it. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books that didn't seem like they'd ever been touched. I moved quickly, wiping down the surfaces, dusting off the shelves. Just as I reached the bookshelf in the corner, something felt off. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't just dust, it was like the air was different around that spot. I ran my fingers along the edges of the wood, and that's when I felt it. A seam, a thin, almost invisible line running vertically along one of the panels. I pressed against it, and to my shock, the panel gave way with a soft click. A section of the bookshelf swung inward, revealing a hidden doorway. My breath caught in my throat. I shouldn't have gone inside. I should have shut that panel and left the room without looking back. But something about that dark opening pulled at me, like it wanted me to see what was on the other side. So I stepped in. The air was colder, thick like a basement, even though we were on the third floor. The space was small, barely enough for one person to stand comfortably, but at the end of the short, dark passage was another door. This one was metal. I reached for the handle. It turned easily. Inside, the first thing I saw were the screens. Rows and rows of small, flickering monitors filled the wall in front of me, casting an eerie glow across the cramped room. The images on them sent a shiver down my spine. They were live security feeds. Not from the front gate, not from the hallways, but from inside bedrooms, inside private spaces. Some were from the mansion, others weren't. I felt my stomach twist as I recognized some of the faces on the screens. Celebrities, executives, women, men, some of them at parties, some of them alone in hotel rooms, unaware that a hidden camera was watching their every move. I took a step back, bumping into a shelf behind me. That's when I saw them. Stacks of CDs, hard drives, each one labeled with a date and a name. Some of those names I knew. Big names, names that made the music industry move. I felt sick. I wasn't supposed to see this. Nobody was supposed to see this. Before I could even process what I was looking at, a sharp beep cut through the silence. One of the monitors flickered. A new feed popped up. Someone had entered the house. I panicked. I had to get out of there. I carefully slid the shelf panel back into place, making sure it clicked shut just as I had found it. I wiped the doorknob clean with my sleeve, making sure I didn't leave a trace. I grabbed my cleaning supplies and rushed out of the study, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would give me away. I made it downstairs without anyone noticing. The house was still quiet, but I didn't trust it. I dumped the cleaning supplies in the storage closet and went straight to the back exit, stepping out into the cold night air. My hands were shaking. I tried to tell myself that maybe I imagined it, maybe I had misunderstood what I saw. But deep down, I knew the truth. That room wasn't just some hidden security hub. It was something worse, and I had just walked straight into it. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those screens again, those flickering images of people who had no idea they were being watched. I kept replaying it over and over. Why was it there? Why were there so many names? Who else knew about it? The whole thing made my stomach turn. But I did what everyone else who worked in that house did. I stayed quiet. I showed up to work the next day like nothing happened. I cleaned. I nodded when the others made small talk. I kept my head down. But I wasn't the only one feeling uneasy. Marcus, one of the guys who handled maintenance around the house, was on edge too. I'd known him for a while. He was one of the few people I trusted to be real in that place. "Yo," he muttered as he leaned against the supply closet. "You hear about the East Wing?" I froze. "What about it?" "Some girl was brought upstairs last night," he said, keeping his voice low. "Didn't come down." I swallowed hard. Maybe she left another way. He gave me a look. "You and I both know there ain't no other way." I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. I'd seen enough to know that people disappeared in that house. Not in some supernatural way. No, this was real, tangible. I'd heard whispers, seen faces at parties that never showed up again. It happened so often that the staff stopped asking questions. You had to if you wanted to keep your job. Marcus wasn't like the rest of us. He was too damn curious for his own good, and I saw it in his face. He wasn't gonna let this go. I should have warned him right then, told him to leave it alone, but I didn't. I just let it be. That night, another party. Another wave of people pouring into the house, their laughter and music masking the tension that never really went away. And that's when Marcus did something stupid. While everyone was distracted, he slipped upstairs. I didn't see it happen, but I knew. I felt it. It was the same feeling I got before I found that hidden room. That weight pressing against my chest like something was waiting. Marcus didn't come back. I was in the kitchen when I saw the shift. The security guards weren't laughing anymore, weren't leaning against the walls like usual. They were moving with purpose, talking into their earpieces. Something was happening. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped out into the hall, glancing toward the staircase. Marcus was coming down. His face was pale, his jaw was tight, his whole body was stiff, like he was forcing himself to walk like nothing was wrong. But I could see the way his hands were shaking. And behind him, at the top of the stairs, stood Diddy. He wasn't smiling. Marcus didn't look at me as he walked past. Didn't look at anyone. He just headed straight for the back door. The next morning, he was gone. Fired. No explanation. Nobody talked about it. I asked one of the other housekeepers if they'd heard anything. They just shook their head, muttering something about how Marcus broke the rule. No one went against Diddy in that house. And the girl, the one Marcus had seen, she was never mentioned again. I never saw Marcus after that. I don't know if he made it out all right, or if he just disappeared like the others. But I do know this. Whatever he saw in that room, it changed him. And that was all I needed to know. From that day on, I stopped asking questions. I just kept my head down, and I never ever went near that room again. Story number 2, the loyalty test. I still remember the day I got the call. "You're moving up," they told me. I had only been working for Diddy for 6 months, running errands, handling schedules, making sure everything was where it needed to be before he walked into a room. It was basic assistant work, but I didn't mind. In my head, this was just the first step. I came from nothing, no industry connections, no fancy degree, just a girl who worked hard, smiled at the right people, and knew how to stay invisible when it counted. I saw people come and go all the time, chewed up and spit out by this industry. But I wasn't going to be one of them. So when I heard I was being promoted to work directly under Diddy, I thought I made it. I should have known better. At first, it was exactly what I expected. More responsibility, bigger tasks, tighter schedules. I was on call 24/7, answering texts at 3 a.m., running to pick up whatever Diddy needed wherever he needed it. That's how it worked. You were expected to drop everything when he called. And I did, because I was grateful, because I knew that's what it took to survive in this world. But then, the whispers started. "You haven't done the test yet, have you?" I laughed the first time I heard it. Some of the older staff were standing around after a meeting, and I caught them looking at me with this weird mix of sympathy and curiosity. "What test?" I asked. No one answered, but one of the guys, a driver who had been with Diddy for years, just shook his head and said, "You'll see." I thought they were messing with me, some kind of hazing thing. But I started noticing little changes. People treated me differently. Some of the other assistants, ones who had been around longer, started watching me, like they were waiting for something. My boss, the one who handled all of Diddy's personal scheduling, suddenly became way more hands-on with me, checking in, making sure I was always available. Then one night, I got a text. "Boss wants to see you after the party tonight. Be ready." I felt my stomach tighten, but I told myself it was nothing, just another late-night errand. I was wrong. The party was already winding down by the time I got there. This wasn't one of the big public parties. This was private, the kind of party where you needed an invite just to know it was happening. The music was low, the air thick with smoke, and the room was way too dark for the number of people inside. I recognized some faces, celebrities, producers, models who weren't technically famous but were treated like they were. They all moved like they had been here before, like they knew exactly how the night was going to end. I didn't belong here. Diddy was sitting in the back, lounging on a couch, a drink in one hand and his phone in the other. He barely looked up when I walked in. Someone nudged me forward, and I realized I had stopped at the entrance. "Come in," Diddy said. His voice was calm, almost lazy, like he had all the time in the world. I stepped forward, suddenly aware of how many people were watching me. Diddy finally looked up, smiling like we shared some kind of inside joke. "You've been doing good," he said. "I see you hustling." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Thank you." He tapped the couch next to him. "Sit." I hesitated for half a second, but in this world, hesitation was weakness, so I sat. A glass was placed in my hand before I even registered it. Something dark, expensive. I wasn't much of a drinker, but I knew better than to say no. "You like working for me?" Diddy asked, swirling his own glass. "Yes." He nodded like he expected that answer. "You want to go far in this business?" "Yes." Another smile. "Good. Then you know how this works." I didn't. "Not really, but I was about to find out." Diddy leaned back, waving someone over, a girl, young, beautiful, wearing something so thin it barely counted as clothing. She sat on the floor beside him, resting her head against his knee like it was normal. I forced myself not to react. "You know what I like?" he asked, running a hand through the girl's hair. I shook my head. Loyalty. The word hung between us, heavy, waiting. Diddy lifted his drink, motioning around the room. "Everyone here?" he said. "They passed the test." I swallowed, my grip tightening on my glass. "And now it's your turn." A hand landed on my shoulder. Not Diddy's, someone else's. I turned, and suddenly there was another drink in my other hand. A different color, something stronger. "Take it." I didn't move. Someone laughed. "Nervous?" Diddy asked, tilting his head. I forced a smile. "No." "Then drink." It wasn't a request. I stared at the glass. I wasn't stupid. I knew what this was. I had heard the rumors, seen the girls leave parties looking like they didn't even know their own names anymore. I wasn't about to be one of them. I pretended to drink, tilted the glass just enough for it to look real, but I kept my lips pressed tight. Diddy watched me, eyes unreadable. Then he smiled again. "Good." I thought I was in the clear. I thought I passed. But then he leaned in, voice dropping to something only I could hear. "Now show me." I felt my stomach drop. Around us, the party was shifting. The music got quieter. People started moving closer, like they knew what was about to happen. The girl at Diddy's feet looked up at me, blank, waiting. I knew in that moment what they expected me to do. What the test really was. I had two choices. Do what they wanted, or walk away and lose everything. I didn't do it. I thought about it. I swear I thought about it, because in that moment, with all those eyes on me, with Diddy sitting there like a god, waiting to see if I would obey, I knew what was at stake. I knew what it meant to say no. But I also knew that if I said yes, if I gave in, I wouldn't be me anymore. I'd just be another one of them. So I did the only thing I could. I stood up. The air in the room changed. The music didn't stop, but it felt like it did. Conversations slowed. A couple of people laughed under their breath, like they already knew what was coming next. Diddy didn't react at first. He just looked up at me from his seat, his fingers still lazily twirling through that girl's hair. "You good?" he asked, casual, like I had just excused myself to use the bathroom. I forced a smile. "Yeah, I think I should go." Diddy let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head like I had just said the dumbest thing in the world. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You sure about that?" The way he said it, low, calm, like he wasn't asking me if I was sure. He was giving me a chance to fix my answer. I nodded. For a long second, he just stared at me. The whole room was watching, waiting to see if he'd let me leave. Then, slowly, he smiled. "All right," he said, leaning back. "I respect that." He nodded to one of the security guys near the door. "Make sure she gets home safe." That was it. No argument, no threats. Just a nod. The guy grabbed my arm, not rough but firm enough that I knew this was over. He led me through the house, past the hallways filled with models who had no idea what was really going on in the back rooms. I didn't breathe until I was outside. Even then, I wasn't sure I had made the right decision. Because if there's one thing I know about this industry, it's that no one says no to Diddy and gets away with it. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. At first I thought it was my alarm, but when I grabbed it I saw 10 missed calls. And a text. "Go outside." My stomach twisted. I pulled back the curtain and froze. My car was sitting in the driveway, just like I left it, except the windows were shattered, the tires were slashed, and across the hood, in thick black paint, were 3 words. "No one leaves." I dropped my phone. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I was going to throw up. I backed away from the window, my mind racing. Was someone still outside? Were they watching me right now? Then my phone buzzed again. A picture. I picked up the phone with shaking hands and opened it. It was me. A picture of me from last night, standing outside Diddy's house, just before I got in the car. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I rushed to check the rest of my messages. More pictures, more proof that someone had been following me. One was of my apartment building. Another was of the coffee shop I went to every morning. And then there was the last one. The picture of my mom, sitting outside on her porch, completely unaware that someone had been watching her. I dropped my phone again. I don't even remember how long I sat there, staring at the floor. My brain was scrambling, trying to process what was happening, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. Because this wasn't a warning. This was a death sentence. I should have left the city that night, packed a bag, disappeared, changed my name, but I was stupid. I still thought I could fix it. I called my bank first. My accounts were frozen, all of them. No explanation, no access, just gone. Then I tried calling work, tried pretending like this was normal. But the second my boss picked up, I knew it was over. He didn't even let me talk. "Jordan, I'm sorry." "Wait, what?" "It's out of my hands. They said you're done." "Who said?" A long silence. Then, softer. "Don't ask questions." I hung up. That's when I realized I wasn't just fired. I was blacklisted. I spent the next week trying to fix it, calling everyone I knew, pulling every favor I had. But no one would talk to me. No one would help. Some of them wouldn't even pick up. The ones who did, they were different, cold, distant. One guy, a manager I had worked with a few times, finally broke and told me the truth. "You pissed off the wrong people." I begged him to tell me how to fix it. He just sighed. "You can't." And that was it. No one would hire me. No one would even be seen with me. It was like I had never existed. I was a race. And then the calls started. Blocked numbers. Voicemails with nothing but breathing. Texts with random addresses. Locations I had been. I stopped leaving my apartment. Stopped answering the door. Stopped sleeping. But I couldn't just sit there and wait for whatever was coming next. So I made a decision. I packed my bags, wiped my phone, deleted everything. Then I walked away from my life. It's been 5 years. I don't live in LA anymore, I don't use my real name, and I sure as hell never tell people where I used to work. Because this isn't just some Hollywood nightmare. This is real. And I know, deep in my gut, that if I ever get too comfortable, if I ever slip up, even once, they'll find me. And next time, there won't be any warnings. Story 3. The Basement Party. I never thought twice about the kind of places I went. When you do what I do, you learn real fast that curiosity is the fastest way to get hurt. You don't ask questions. You show up, you do what's expected, you get paid, and you keep it moving. That's how you survive. That's how I survived. That's what I kept telling myself when I got the call. It was through one of my regular contacts, a guy named Victor. He handled high-end clients, the kind who didn't want just anyone showing up at their penthouses. If Victor vouched for you, you were golden. If he didn't, you were nobody. The job was simple. A private event, big money, VIP list, no cameras, no social media, no names. I had done jobs like that before, so I didn't think much of it. But then he mentioned the price. It was 10 times my usual rate. And for the first time, I hesitated. "Well, so much?" I asked. Victor laughed. "Because you'll earn it." That should have been my first sign. The driver picked me up at 10 p.m. sharp. It wasn't an Uber, not some black SUV like I was used to. It was an unmarked car, tinted windows, no plates. I almost backed out right there. But then I thought about the money, about how this could be my last job if I played it right. One more payday and I could finally be done with this life. So I got in. The ride was silent. The driver never said a word. He didn't even look at me. Just kept his eyes on the road, weaving through the city like he had driven this path 100 times before. At some point, we left the main roads. No streetlights, no traffic, just long, empty stretches of road. I checked my phone. No signal. I took a deep breath. It was fine. I had been to private estates before. The rich never partied where people could see them. This was just another night. But then we pulled up to the mansion and I knew this was different. The house was massive, not just big, isolated. No neighbors, no city skyline in the distance, just an endless stretch of dark trees surrounding the property. It didn't look like a party was happening at all. No music blaring from inside, no groups of people out front laughing or drinking, just 2 security guards standing at the entrance. I stepped out of the car, adjusting my dress, forcing a smile. The guards didn't smile back. One of them checked me over. Not a pat-down, nothing obvious, just a slow, careful scan, like he was committing my face to memory. The other guy handed me a phone. "Your bag, your phone, give it here." I hesitated. "You're taking my phone?" The first guard finally spoke. "House rules?" I wanted to walk away. I should have walked away. But the driver was already gone, and something told me that if I left now, I wasn't getting paid. So I gave them my phone, my clutch, everything. Then they let me inside. The moment I walked through the doors, I felt it. Something was wrong. I've been to a lot of parties. I know what these places are supposed to feel like. Loud music, people laughing, drinks being poured, conversations happening everywhere. But this wasn't a party. The music was playing, but it was low, soft, like background noise in a fancy restaurant. People were scattered around the room, dressed in designer everything, but no one was talking. No one was smiling. Most of them were sitting in silence, staring at their drinks. Others were whispering to each other, their voices barely above a murmur. And the women, the other girls who had been brought in, they all looked the same. Blank faces, still bodies, drugged. I had seen it before. Pills, powders, whatever their vice was. But this was different. This was controlled. I started to back toward the door, but before I could turn around, a hand grabbed my arm. "You're late." I looked up and saw him. Diddy. I knew the moment I saw his face that I had made a mistake. His eyes were dark, his smile wide, but it didn't reach his eyes. I had seen him before, from a distance, at events, surrounded by security, women, money, power, but this was different. This wasn't him on stage. This was him behind closed doors. "Come on," he said, leading me through the house like he already knew I wouldn't fight. Because at that moment, I wasn't sure what happened if I did. The hallway got quieter the deeper we went. The party faded behind me, and the air got colder. Then I saw it. A staircase. Leading down, I stopped. "What is this?" Diddy looked back at me, still smiling. The real party. I wanted to turn around, to run, but when I glanced over my shoulder, I saw the 2 guards from earlier standing near the entrance. Watching. I turned back. Diddy tilted his head, waiting. I forced a breath. Then I stepped down. The basement was nothing like upstairs. No expensive furniture, no fancy decorations, just concrete floors, dim lights, and the smell of something old and rotting. I could hear voices before I could see anything. Low murmurs, movement. Then the lights shifted, and I saw them. People, men, sitting in a circle, drinks in hand, watching something. I followed their eyes, and then I saw her. A girl, barely dressed, her body swaying like she couldn't keep herself steady. One of the men leaned forward and touched her face. She didn't react, didn't even blink. I took a step back, my stomach twisting. Don't. Diddy grabbed my wrist, not hard, not forceful, but tight enough to tell me there was no leaving. "Relax," he murmured, leading me closer. "We take care of our own." The men turned to look at me. My heart was racing. I knew what was coming next. The girl on the floor, she had started like me. Just another new face in the room. Now she wasn't even there anymore. And I knew deep in my gut that if I didn't figure out a way out of here, I wouldn't be either. I told myself to stay calm. That's the first rule in situations like this. If you panic, you lose. If you make a scene, you're done. I'd been in bad situations before, but nothing like this. Nothing that felt this wrong. The girl on the floor. She wasn't moving, not in a way that made sense. Her limbs were too loose, her eyes barely open, her lips moving without sound, like she was trying to wake up from a dream but couldn't. I took a step back. Diddy's grip tightened on my wrist. I forced a smile. I think I need some air. Diddy chuckled. Relax, you're fine. His tone was soft, casual, like this was all normal, like this was just another night. But I could feel the eyes on me. The men in the room, their slow, lazy stares, like they were waiting for me to follow the script. Then one of them stood up. Tall, older, dressed in an expensive suit. He looked like a businessman, someone you'd pass in a corporate office and never think twice about. He moved toward me, his hand reaching for my arm. She's nervous, he said, smiling like it was funny. Diddy nodded toward the side table where a tray of glasses sat. Give her a drink. The glass was placed in my hand before I could say anything. I looked at it. Dark liquid, the kind that burned going down. But there was something off about the color. Diddy watched me, so did the businessman. The girl on the floor wasn't watching anything. I smiled again, pretending like I was just another girl at the party, just another guest playing along. I raised the glass to my lips, tilted it back, let it touch my tongue. Then I let it slip from my fingers. The glass shattered at my feet. Gasps, someone cursed. I stumbled back, hands to my face. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Diddy didn't move. The businessman wiped his sleeve, sighing like I was an inconvenience. Clumsy. I bent down, pretending to pick up the pieces, my heartbeat slamming against my ribs. I needed to get out. Now. I looked toward the stairs. One guard was blocking the way. Then I looked toward the hallway with the red door. It was cracked open, and from where I was crouched I could see something behind it, something dark. I straightened, trying to act normal, trying not to look like I was planning anything. I should clean this up. Diddy finally smiled. Don't worry about it. He stepped closer, too close. His hand came up and brushed my hair behind my ear, his touch slow, deliberate. I froze. You're not ready yet, he whispered. And that was the last thing I remembered. Story 4. The House That Screams. I've been in the real estate game for over 15 years, and I thought I'd seen it all. Foreclosures that still had people squatting inside. Mansions abandoned so suddenly that the owners left dishes in the sink. Even a house where some guy just vanished, leaving all his stuff behind like he planned to come back but never did. But I'd never seen a place like this. The listing came in through a private client, one of those off-the-record deals. It happens sometimes. Rich people don't always like their business made public, especially when it comes to selling off properties they don't want attached to their names anymore. It was a mansion in the hills, big, isolated, expensive, the kind of place that used to host the most exclusive parties in Hollywood. And it belonged to Diddy. Or at least, it used to. That's what made it weird. Because according to the paperwork, no one had lived there since. Not Diddy, not anyone else, no new owners, no tenants, just empty. For years. And yet somehow, the place still needed to be evaluated. I drove up to the property just before sunset. The road leading up to it was already a red flag, gated, off the main roads, hidden. If you didn't have the exact address, you'd never even know it was there. The mansion itself was massive, 3 stories, modern design, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place that screamed money. But it was all wrong. The lawn was dead, the pool was drained, and the whole place just felt off. I sat in my car for a second just staring at it. I don't know why, but I had the sudden feeling that I was being watched. I shook it off and grabbed my bag. This was just another job. I walked up to the front door, key in hand. It was already unlocked. That should have been my second red flag. The second I stepped inside, I felt it. The air was heavy, not in a way you could explain, but in a way you could feel. Like the house didn't want me there. I took a deep breath and pulled out my tablet. Stick to the checklist. Structural damage? None that I could see. Signs of squatters? No, but the dust was too thick for anyone to have lived here recently. Water damage? Nope. The basics were all fine, but it wasn't the condition of the house that bothered me. It was the feeling. It was too quiet. Houses like this, big empty spaces, they always had some kind of sound. The wind moving through cracks, the faint creak of settling wood. But this place, nothing. It was like the whole house was holding its breath. I started moving through the rooms. The furniture was still there, but everything was covered in sheets. Like whoever left didn't even bother selling anything, they just walked away. The main living room had a massive sectional, big enough to seat at least 20 people, a huge fireplace completely untouched. But when I moved toward the bar, I saw the first real sign that something was wrong. The mirrors were missing. Not broken, not cracked, just gone. Ripped out of the walls. I ran my fingers along the edges where they should have been. The glass wasn't removed carefully, it was shattered, then pulled out. Like someone didn't want to see their reflection. I kept moving. The kitchen was spotless. No signs of rodents, no rotting food, just a massive industrial fridge, still plugged in, still running. I reached for the handle and paused. Something in me didn't want to open it. I did anyway. Inside, empty. But the smell that hit me wasn't. It was faint, but wrong. Like bleach and something else, something rotting. I shut it fast. Took a step back. My instincts were screaming at me to leave. I ignored them. I made my way upstairs. The master bedroom was massive, huge windows, an oversized bed, sheets still on it, covered in dust, and the closet, still full, shoes, dresses, suits, all still there, like someone left in a hurry. That's when I saw it, a single dress lying on the floor. It wasn't dusty like everything else. It was clean, fresh, like someone had been here recently. I turned toward the hallway, and that's when I heard it. A sound, low, faint, almost like breathing, but it wasn't coming from inside the room, it was coming from downstairs. I don't know why I went back down. Every instinct I had was telling me to leave. But I needed to know. I moved toward the sound. It was coming from the back hallway, the one that led to the pool entrance. I reached the door. It was slightly open. The sound got louder, and then I saw them. Scratch marks, along the floorboards, along the walls, like someone had been dragged. My pulse hammered. I stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy, like it was holding something. Then the sound stopped. Silence, and then a single whisper right behind me. Don't look. I spun around, my breath caught in my throat. No one was there. The house was empty, but I wasn't alone. I turned and ran, out the door, down the driveway, into my car. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands shaking. I forced myself to look back at the house, and that's when I saw it. The curtains in the upstairs window, they were moving, like someone was standing there, watching. I started the car and drove. I didn't stop until I was halfway across the city. I didn't report the house. I didn't mention the whisper. I sent in my notes, listed the house as uninhabitable, and walked away. That night, I woke up to a missed call. No number, no voicemail, just silence. And when I checked my email, the listing was gone. Like it never existed, like I was never there. I told myself I was done with that house. I wasn't going back. But a part of me couldn't let it. I tried. I really did. I ignored the way the hair on my arms stood up whenever I thought about that whisper. I pushed away the memory of those scratch marks on the floor, the strange, suffocating feeling in the air. I even convinced myself that maybe I imagined it, that houses that sit empty for too long just feel wrong. But then the listing vanished, not just off my schedule, off the entire system. I checked with the firm, but no one had an answer. It must have been pulled by the owner. But that didn't make sense, because the owner didn't exist. No one had lived there since Diddy left. No buyers, no tenants, no maintenance records, nothing. And then, 2 nights later, I got a call. No caller ID. I shouldn't have picked up. But I did. At first, it was silence. Then, a voice, soft, breathy, "Come back." I hung up so fast my hands fumbled the phone. I should have left it alone. I should have walked away. But the next morning, I grabbed my keys, drove to the mansion, and let myself in. Because I needed to know. The house felt different, like it knew I was there. I moved through the hallways slower this time, my steps careful. I wasn't here to check on the listing anymore. I was here to find out what was hiding inside this house. I started with the locked doors. The first one was near the main living room. I had noticed it before but hadn't paid much attention. Just a simple white door with a heavy bolt. I checked the handle, locked. I looked around, my pulse picking up, before kneeling and pressing my ear against the wood. Silence. Then, a faint sound, like something shuffling on the other side. I stood up fast, stepping back. I told myself I was just hearing things, that maybe an old pipe or settling wood had made the noise. Then I checked the next door. It was chained shut, not just locked, chained. I had never seen a house do that before. It wasn't like someone just wanted to keep people out. It was like someone wanted to keep something inside. I made my way to the lower level. The first time I came here, I avoided the basement. I had told myself it wasn't important, that it didn't need to be evaluated. But now, standing at the top of the staircase, I realized why I had really avoided it. Because I was scared. Something about that stairwell felt wrong. The air was colder, thicker, like something was waiting. I stepped down anyway. The stairs creaked under my weight, the kind of sound that made my skin crawl. At the bottom was a long, narrow corridor. I turned on my flashlight. The hallway stretched out ahead of me, too long for the size of the house. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. The second, the doors. There were 3 of them, all bolted shut. I started with the first one. It took me a minute to pry it open. The handle was rusted, the lock stiff. But eventually the door groaned and swung inward. The smell hit me first. Not rotting food, not mold. Something else. Something worse. The room was small, soundproofed. And on the walls, scratch marks. Deep, desperate, like someone had tried to claw their way out. My chest tightened. I backed up fast, my flashlight shaking in my grip. I turned toward the second door. It was unlocked. I pushed it open and froze. A chair. Just one. Right in the center of the room. And behind it, mounted on the wall, was a camera. A recording setup. There were no tapes, no wires, just an empty chair facing the lens. I felt sick. I turned toward the third door. And that's when I heard it. A whisper. Inside the room, I swung my light back. Nothing. The chair, the camera, the empty walls. I took a shaky breath. Then, behind me, another whisper. I spun, my flashlight flickering. No one was there, but the door I had just opened, it slammed shut. I ran. I didn't even think. I just bolted up the stairs, across the main floor, through the front door. I didn't stop until I was in my car, my hands gripping the wheels so tight my knuckles turned white. I stared at the mansion, the upstairs window. For a second I thought I saw the curtains move again, like someone was standing there, watching. Then my phone buzzed. I nearly jumped out of my skin. No caller ID. I didn't pick up this time. I let it ring. Then a message popped up. You shouldn't have come back. I didn't go to work the next day. I called out sick, locked my doors, and kept my phone on silent. That night I checked my emails. The listing was gone. I checked with my firm. They had no record of it. No paperwork, no files. Like it had never existed. Like I had never stepped inside that house. I thought about telling someone, but I didn't. Because deep down I already knew whoever wanted that house forgotten. They had the power to make it disappear. And if I wasn't careful, they could make me disappear too. Story 5. The man who knew too much. I was never supposed to matter. I wasn't famous. I wasn't powerful. I wasn't even the kind of person who gets noticed in a room full of important people. That's what made me perfect for the job. I was just an accountant. I didn't handle contracts or manage artists. I didn't book flights or security details. My job was simple: keep the numbers straight. And for years, that's all I did. I worked in a small office on the 10th floor of a downtown building, logging expenses, processing invoices, handling payroll. Nothing flashy, nothing dangerous, just numbers on a screen. Until one day, they weren't just numbers anymore. That's when I knew I was in trouble. It started with a single transaction, a payment that didn't make sense. I was going through the usual reports when I saw a huge wire transfer listed under an account I didn't recognize. No vendor name, no invoice, no contract. Just a 6-figure payment that didn't belong. At first I thought it was a mistake. It happens, a misplaced entry, an account number off by 1 digit. I flagged it, sent it up the chain, and moved on. But the next day, the transaction was gone. Not corrected, erased. Like it had never existed. That's when I got my first anonymous email. No subject line, no name, just one sentence. Stop looking. My stomach dropped. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath. This wasn't just a mistake. This was something I wasn't supposed to see. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it wasn't my problem, that I wasn't getting paid to ask questions. But the more I looked, the worse it got. There weren't just 1 or 2 of these hidden transactions. There were dozens. Wire transfers to offshore accounts, payments to companies that didn't exist, cash withdrawals in amounts that made no sense. And then there were the personal expenses. I wasn't stupid. I knew that rich men hide their vices in their accounting. But this wasn't just excess spending. This was funding something that needed to be buried deep. That's when I made my first mistake. I reached out. I didn't go to the police. I wasn't naive enough to think that would do anything. I went to a journalist, someone who had been covering the industry for years, digging into stories no one wanted to talk about. I sent an anonymous email. I have information on Diddy. Proof. You need to see this. The response came an hour later. Meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m. I'll text you the location. It was happening fast, too fast. I should have backed out. I should have wiped my hard drive, shut my mouth, and forgotten everything. Instead, I spent the whole night gathering evidence. I pulled everything, emails, payment records, hidden accounts. Then I found the videos, and that's when I realized this wasn't just about money. The videos weren't in the system. They weren't attached to emails or invoices. They were buried deep in folders that didn't have names. I opened the first one. It was a private party, not the kind that got posted on social media, the kind that no one was supposed to see. The footage was grainy, low light, security cam quality. At first it looked normal, people drinking, laughing, music playing. Then I saw the VIP section, a back room separate from the main party. The door opened. A group of young women were led inside, and behind them, Diddy. I watched, my hands were shaking. The video didn't have sound, but I didn't need it. The girls were nervous, some were barely standing. One of them tried to turn back. She was stopped. A man grabbed her by the neck, whispered something in her ear. Then she walked inside. The door shut, and the video ended. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, because this wasn't just money laundering. This was something else, and now I was a part of it. I emailed the journalist again. I found something else. It's bigger than I thought. The response was instant. Meet me tonight, 10 p.m., same place. I hesitated. Then I typed back, if I don't show up, you know what happened. Then I shut my laptop, grabbed my bag, and left. The meeting spot was a coffee shop downtown. Public, safe, too many people around for anything to happen. At least, that's what I told myself. I parked across the street, checked my phone. No new messages. I waited. 10. He wasn't there. I called, no answer. I checked my email, nothing. Then I looked up, and I saw the black SUV parked down the block. I don't know how long it had been there, but I knew it wasn't a coincidence. That's when my phone vibrated. A new email. No subject, no name. Just 3 words. Too late. I felt my stomach drop. I turned the car on, and I drove. I didn't go home. I knew better. I took the longest route possible, weaving through back roads, stopping twice to make sure no one was following me. Then I checked the news. Nothing. No missing persons. No reports. Like he had never existed. I stayed in a motel that night. Didn't sleep, didn't eat. Just kept checking my phone, waiting for a name to pop up, but it never did. The journalist was gone, and I knew if I didn't disappear too, I'd be next. I left the city the next morning. I ditched my phone, wiped my hard drive, took out all the cash I could, because I wasn't just a whistleblower anymore. I was a loose end, and loose ends don't get second chances. I knew I couldn't stay in one place for long. The second I saw that black SUV parked outside the coffee shop, I understood. They had already made their move. I was too late. I didn't even know what I was running from. Cops, private security, paid hitmen. It didn't matter. All I knew was that if I stayed, I wouldn't make it through the night. So I ran. I ditched my car in a parking garage, took a bus out of the city, paid in cash, and got off 3 towns later, just in case someone was tracking routes. I found a cheap motel, paid for 3 nights up front, and locked the door behind me. Then I turned on the TV. I needed to know. I flipped through every channel, scanned every news website on the motel's half-working Wi-Fi. Nothing. No reports, no missing persons alert. No journalist, no me. It was like we had both never existed. By the second day, I was losing my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the files on my laptop, the wire transfers, the offshore accounts, the party footage. I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid, that maybe the journalist had gotten scared and bailed. Then, On the third morning, the news finally broke. But it wasn't about the journalist. It was about me. I nearly dropped my coffee when I saw the headline. Accountant found dead in car crash outside city limits. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into knots. I clicked the article, my hands shaking. It was me. My name, my age, a brief history of my career. The report said I had been driving late at night, lost control of my car, and veered off the road. The vehicle caught fire on impact. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Because I was still here, alive, reading my own death report. I scrawled down, my vision blurring. The article listed a burned-out vehicle found in a ditch off a back road I had never even driven on. No surviving remains. A closed case. Just like that. I checked my phone, my mind spinning. There had to be a mistake. But then I saw the email. It came in exactly 1 minute after the article was posted. No subject, no sender. Just 2 words. You're dead. I dropped the phone, stumbled back. This wasn't just a warning. This was erasure. Someone had planted a body, burned a car, fabricated an entire accident report. And they did it so no one would come looking for me. Because as far as the world knew, I had to exist anymore. I spent the next hour pacing the motel room trying to figure out my next move. I couldn't call anyone, couldn't use my credit cards, couldn't check into a real hotel, couldn't even risk walking past a security camera. Then I made another mistake. I turned on the news again, and this time I found a different headline. Journalist takes leave of absence, drops all investigations. I froze. It was him, the journalist I was supposed to meet. But he wasn't missing. He was alive, and he was done talking. The article said he had stepped away from his career for personal reasons. That he had pulled all of his stories, resigned from his publication, and deleted his social media. I knew what that meant. He had been silenced. I grabbed my laptop and checked my email history. The evidence I sent him, the transaction logs, the hidden accounts, the video footage. Every email thread was wiped. Every attachment was corrupted, like it had never existed. Just like me. I sat there for hours, staring at my screen, thinking about the people I had worked for, the things I had found, the faces in those videos. I thought about that girl in the VIP room, the way she tried to turn back before she was pulled inside. I thought about the way the wire transfers disappeared the second I flagged them. I thought about how, with one headline, my entire life had been erased. Then I thought about the journalist. And I knew I had 2 choices. I could run forever. Or I could find out what really happened to him. I started digging. It took me 3 days to find his address. He had moved fast. Sold his place, changed his phone, and left the city without a trace. But I knew how to track numbers. I found a storage unit in his name, paid up 6 months in advance. And I knew if he had left anything behind, it would be there. I bought gloves, a hoodie, and a fake ID. Then I went to find the truth. The storage facility was in a bad part of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions. I walked in, gave a fake name, and signed in as a friend of the unit's owner. The clerk barely looked at me. Unit 312 end of the hall. I kept my head down and made my way to the door. The lock was easy. 1 click, 1 twist. Then I was inside. The unit was almost empty. No furniture, no suitcases, just a single metal filing cabinet in the corner. I opened the first drawer. Empty. The second. Empty. Then I opened the third. And there it was. A manila envelope. I reached for it, my hands shaking. The second my fingers touched it, my phone buzzed. I froze. Then I slowly pulled it out of my pocket. No caller ID. I let it ring. Then a message came through. Walk away. I swallowed hard, forced myself to breathe. Then I opened the envelope. Inside were photos, stacks of them. Party scenes, private jets, hotel rooms, faces I recognized, faces I didn't. And then at the very bottom, a single flash drive, labeled with one word. I stared at it, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. This was it. This was why they made him disappear. I pulled out my laptop, plugged it in. The screen loaded. Then a single video file appeared. I clicked it, and my world ended. I don't remember leaving the storage unit. I don't remember getting back to my motel. All I remember is what I saw, and the fact that now I can't unsee it, and I know they're coming for me next.